So this video is going to be about the pen tool. So far in our work with Illustrator, we've focused on simply using primitives along with squares, circles, ellipses, all that kind of thing, along with our pathfinders to create objects, because everything can be broken down into basic components. But when we have need for more organic kinds of things, that's when the pen tool comes in. And so today, that's what we're going to look at. So a couple of things about this before I start. One is I am working in the Essentials workspace, and I'm working with a basic toolbar. If you have the advanced toolbar up, which is 2 columns, it looks different, and there are more options available with the pen tool. But I feel like the basic toolbar gives me absolutely everything I need. Fewer clicks, fewer times going back to the toolbar, that sort of thing. So that's why I use this one. If you're seeing 2 columns here, go to your window menu, go down to toolbars, and choose basic from that. And I'll show you why. So the pen tool is the 3rd one down, and right below that's the curvature tool, which we've already looked at. But the pen tool right here is what we're going to focus on. And if I click and hold on it, you'll see that there are only 2 tools here. There's the pen tool and there's this anchor point tool, both of which we'll look at. But if I just click on this little arrow out here, I can tear this off and let it float up here on my menu. So that's the first thing. And everything we need to do, we're going to do with just this pen tool. The second thing is, it is very tempting with the pen tool, especially when you don't know how to use it and you're just learning it, to create shapes with far too many paths or points, excuse me. So part of our grading rubric is always, is the object created with a reasonable number of points? And so far that hasn't been such a big deal with the primitive work we've done. But now that we're getting to the pen tool, it becomes a lot more relevant. And the primary reason is that, like I said, it's very tempting to place a lot of points along a curve. And the more points you have, A, the more uneven your curve is going to be, the rougher it'll be. And B, when you have to go back and edit it, that's a lot more points that you have to move. So I want to pull up my layers panel here, and I've got a couple of examples of what we're not going to work to do. So these first 3 things I show you, these are not what we're aspiring to. So I'm going to start with a tracing of Mickey Mouse. And just unlock those. Select that. If I go to outline mode, Command Y, you'll see that the pen tool is not used to a very good end on this particular object. Far too many points on curves makes them rough. Handlebars pulled out, sort of askew, that kind of thing. So here's my first example of what we're going to try. We're going to work towards not creating. The second item is this Apple logo. And again, far too many points. Also very uneven. But we're using a lot of straight line segments here, which we don't need. And the third one is this phone icon, which, unlike the other 2, on the surface looks really pretty good. But if I select and go back to outline mode, oops. See all the points along here making this up? Again, something we want to try to avoid if we can. An awful lot of points here. This segment by itself should just be 2 points, and it's currently 4. So just a lot of extra stuff. So to show you what not to do, we're going to move on to how we're actually going to use this. And I'm going to start with just a couple of basic things. The first is, with the pen tool, we can create any shape we want just by clicking and dropping points. We can create a filled shape. We can make this as complicated as we want. Maybe do this, come down here, do this. And make, just by laying down points, we make, more complex shapes. And they're really just points connected by a line. And this is a fine way to use the tool, although usually we think more of curves when we do this, but I want to start here and then we'll kind of move on. So with this object selected though, remember it's just the same way with whenever we work with primitives. I go to my direct selection tool, every one of these corners has a corner widget assigned to it. And I can click on those and I can still modify all of these corners, either individually or batches of them at a time. So still making some rather organic shapes here, but did it with straight lines and I did it with corner points. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, this is a closed shape, but if I go back to my pen tool here, I can also create open line paths. So if I just click, drop a couple of points, and then I tap the return key or the enter key on my keyboard, outline mode, you'll see that I can create just line segments this way as well. So in this particular case, does no good to have it filled, but I'll drop down here to my toolbar and flip that. And I can create line segments. The pattern on Charlie Brown's sweater. Hit return. All right. So using this line, creating line segments. We can also, with this pen tool, as it is right now, we can also add additional points to this segment, or any of these really. Add additional points or remove points. So let's say I want an additional point in here. If I hover over top, let me find a better spot to do this. Here we go. Let's add it over here so we can see the cursor. So if you pay attention to the cursor, when I hover right over top of the path, I get the little plus sign at the bottom edge of it. And if I click, that'll drop a new path. And if I decided that I got too many points here and I want to remove a couple, if I just hover over top of an existing point, you'll see it changes to a minus sign. And if I click on that, I can remove that point. So this is kind of why I like the pen tool and the basic toolbar. The advanced toolbar gives you separate tools for each of those actions. So I can do it all with a basic pen tool here. So straight line segments are just one way to use this. And I'll pop over here to my layers panel, lock that, hide it, and let's create a new layer. The way most of us are used to probably looking at this though, is to draw curves. And with the pen tool, I can draw any curved path and curved shape that I want. I can mix it up with straight points, and then I can close those up. So I can do curved paths. And this is what we're going to spend a little more time looking at. So if you notice, the first thing about drawing this path is when I lay down a point, I click and I drag rather than just clicking like I did before. If I click and I drag, I pull out these Bezier handlebars, and I'm always going to pull the handlebars in the direction that I want to draw. So I tend to draw from left to right, so I'm pulling my cursor out left to right. And then when I lay down my next point, you'll see that I get a sense for, if I just drop this point exactly right here, what that curve is going to look like. But if I click and drag out again, that'll show me the final state of that curve. And I'll just kind of keep doing that all the way around the shape. And when I click on so to close the path, I click on the point I started with, that closes it. And if I just continue to drag, I'll drag out my final handlebar. And these handlebars are all editable and modifiable. So if I go up here to my tools panel and grab my direct select tool, I can select on a point and I can further modify and refine these. So it's only important that I lay down the rough shape. Frequently, I want to go back and change, modify, improve the curves that I have. And I can do that way. So that's just the basic of pulling out points. Now, like I did before, I can also create line segments. I can draw a point here, here, here. Tap the return key or the enter key on my keyboard, and that leaves me with a line segment. This curve I just made here, I could probably actually do with one curve here. Come over here, if I hold down my shift key, and then draw this one out, I can do that with a couple of points. And if I need to, then hit return. And like I said, if I need to, then I can still edit these fairly easily and succinctly. Whereas if I had more points here, so I'm just going to add a couple more points just to make a point. And if I want to change the arc of this, now watch what happens when I drag this out. This is why we work to have as few points as possible. I am likely not, well, I will get this to be the shape that I want it to be, but look how much more work that is than just the few points that I laid down up here. Actually, I probably even have one too many points here. There, that might actually be the maximum. So I got a point, but it's still, if I want to, change this curve overall, I still have a couple of points that I've got to move. So it depends upon the shape that you're looking for as to how many points you actually need. But, always start with the fewest possible, and then we can always add more points later. And as you've seen, we can also remove them. So we're going to work towards creating shapes with as few points as possible. Okay, so those are the basics of working with the pen tool. So let's add a new layer here. Turn this one off. So we can also use modifier keys with our pen tool. And this is where it becomes valuable. Before I get into the modifier keys, one of the things I'm going to point out here is that there are actually two ways of working with a pen tool in Illustrator. I'm showing you the one today that's a little more involved, more steps. But here's the thing. Every application in Adobe Creative Cloud, Photoshop, Illustrator, After Effects, Premiere, you name it, they all have pen tools. The way that I'm showing you here is exactly the way those pen tools work in all of those applications. at least as recently as a couple of days ago. Last time I used them in Photoshop and whatnot. So this method that I'm showing is a method you need to know in order to be just as adept with the pen tool in Photoshop, After Effects, and other apps as you're going to get here in Illustrator. The simpler way of working with the pen tool in Illustrator, the other apps don't have. And it's a luxury in Illustrator, and we'll definitely learn to use it because it's a time saver. But this process of using the pen tool is important for all the other apps. And taking the time to master it here is going to make working in those other apps even better and even more enjoyable. So, having disclaimed that, let's take a look. So I don't always want to draw just continuously curved shapes. Sometimes I want my path to change directions, that kind of thing. So 2 keys that I can use as modifiers, actually 3 keys. The Option key on the keyboard, the Shift key, as well as the Command key. So we're going to focus more on the Shift and the Option key here. So first off, if I'm going to click and draw out a path, and I want to make sure I constrain it either horizontally or vertically, I'm going to tap the Shift key on my keyboard. And that's going to constrain it horizontal, 45 degrees, as well as vertical. All right? So that's the first thing. And I can come down here to this one, hold down my Shift key, come over here, and I've got my smart guides on so I can see when I'm lined up above and below, or lined up to other points. Oh, there it is. Drag that out, and I'm just holding my Shift key as I do all of these. To create a nice smooth path. Circular object, not quite a circle. If I need a circle, I'm going to draw a circle with an ellipse. But this gives me 4 points to create a round shape. One of the things, I don't know if you noticed that I did, when I get up here to this last point and click, hold down my Shift key and drag this out, in order to make sure that this curve is even on each side of the point, I'm actually dragging out to the end of the originating handlebar here. And that'll make sure that my handlebar on the other side of the point is the same length. That ensures that it's nice and smooth. So let's pull that up there. Another thing to show you real quick that I didn't show you in the previous section, if I draw, these curves out, and I do some, I don't know, I'm not paying attention, and I, lose my curve. I'm not done, but I lose it somehow. I can always, with my pen tool, hover right back over the last point that I laid down, click on that, and drag out, or just click on it, and continue that curve. So if I lose it, I can pick it right back up again and finish drawing. All right. So far, so good. Fairly easy. And now, let's pull those off to the side. Now we're going to introduce the Option key. The Option key is valuable because it allows us to change directions with our path. So, and honestly, the order in which I do things matters a whole lot. So I'm going to click and drag out my first point, and then come over here and click and drag this one out. And I'm not letting go of my mouse button. I'm keeping it held down. Keeping my mouse button held down, if I now press my Option key, I can change the direction of this handlebar. And then go down and lay my next point. click and pull it out. Still holding down on my mouse button, I press the Option key again. Maybe I move it this direction. And I'll come over here. I'm going to click and drag this. Hold down my Option key. Maybe I'll combine that with the Shift key this time. That'll constrain it up and down. Let go. I can come down here, draw that. Then I'll just come out here for my next point, curve it, hold down my Option key, and I can change the direction on all of these paths. So, like I said, the order that I do this matters though. So if I need to click, hold down on the mouse button, drag it out. Still holding down the mouse button, I press my Option key and I change the direction of that path. And that's how that works. So I've used the Option key modifier. I've used the Shift key. I can always, and again, I don't have to get these perfect the first time through. I can go back and edit all of these points, without a problem. If I'm this far and I look and this is really bothering me, maybe I don't like that. I want to make a change to one of these other points. If I press my Command key, notice that the pen tool is still my selected tool, but I'm holding down the Command key. I can go back, click on a point, and adjust it a little bit. Maybe this should really go this direction. And then let up on my Command key, and I'm back to where I started. And I can continue drawing my path. And before I'm done, I have a nice fairly even shape. Grab my direct select tool. I can start refining some of these curves just a little bit and move stuff around. All right. So far, so good. The creation we did with primitives before, we can incorporate primitives into this shape if we want to. We could grab an ellipse or a rectangle and draw this in, and I can still select both of these, go to my pathfinders and use that unite to join stuff together. So I can use all of these tools together to this end. All right, so now showing you how how to use those modifier keys along with the pen tool. The one last thing is this anchor point tool. And if I select this one, hold down my Command key, select the shape, I can click on an anchor point and I can change it with this. So if I feel like that should have been a little rounder, I can convert that to an even Bezier. I can still use my Option key though to refine it. Got to be careful with it though. Let's see, let's do that. And then let's just use my Option key to change those shapes. So that's what I can do with this anchor point tool. I'll do one other thing here. Add a new layer, turn this one off. If I draw, let's just say I draw let's draw a star. I'm going to grab a star tool, draw out a star. I can use my pen tool with anything that's a path. So let's just, actually that's good. So if I go up here and I grab this anchor point tool, I could click on this point of the path and change its shape. There are ways to create the shape, but you know, lots of ways to do everything in Illustrator. Maybe this one we do this with. I can also use my pen tool just the same way that I have been by adding a new point, I could say, or removing points on this primitive shape. So I use my pen tool to flatten that off, and then hold down my Option key, click on that point, and we can give it a little more of a curve. So using my pen tool to modify other shapes. That started out as a star, but you'd never know it. So anything with a path, including type. If I create, yeah, we'll just do this super quick here. There we go. Object. Whoops. Type. Create outlines. And I can use my pen tool to do that. And my anchor point to maybe modify the shape of a character. Anyway, all right. So now I'm going to draw something meaningful with it. I've just been working with shapes right now, but let's go ahead and close that layer. And I'm going to turn on, I have a template layer already for the old Twitter icon. And I'm going to create a new layer. Twitter not X. All right. So let's use the pen tool and our modifier keys to draw this shape. So if I grab my pen tool, I'm going to pick a point, any point to draw from. So I'm going to click on the first point and drag. And then I'm going to come over here to the second point, to the second corner, click there, and I'm going to drag across for that. And I'm just going to pull that out to match up those curves. Like I said, I can modify this later on. So I have not yet released my mouse button. I still have it pressed down. I'm going to press the Option key, and I'm going to change the direction of this. So where should my next point go? I could probably place a point here, but I'm going to try to do this by placing a point over here first. And I'm probably not even going to get it right the first time. I'm probably going to come back and edit this. But if I click here and drag out, I'm not really matching it, but it's looking like I can get it. It's looking like I can get it. So I'm just going to continue on, press on my Option key. And if I do this right, I will never, except to move to my next point, I will never really let go of my mouse button. Click. Oops. Click and drag to make that curve. Hold down my Option key. Pull it out here. Click. It actually looks pretty good. I'm just going to come down here to this point, click and drag. Hold down my Option key. And then this one I'm going to pull out really long. I've got a nice big long curve here that I'm going to try to do in only 2 points. So I'm going to pull this handlebar way out and come over to this point. And I'm definitely going to get that. I'm going to have to modify this. Actually, maybe I'll try and modify it here. So I'm going to finish the shape, then we'll come back. So hold down my Option key, pull it in, go to outline mode so I can see what I'm doing. Option key to change directions. Let go of everything. I come up here to this point, click, pull it out. Now I hold down my Option key to change directions. Let go, come to my next point, drop it, pull out my handlebars, hold down my Option key to change my direction. This is a little longer curve, a little longer handlebar. Come up here to this one, click and drag. Hold down my Option key. Click there. Come up here to my last point. Hold down my Option key immediately. And I can pull that point out. And I'm done. Except for modifying some stuff here. So I can either go grab my direct select tool. Remember, I can also hold down my Command key and go back to some of these points and look at them. Maybe I'll just adjust this. See? 2 points and I got that. I'm going to come down here, click on this one. Let's pull this in. Adjust that a little bit. Good. My select tool, Command Y. And there's my Twitter icon. So 2 points for this entire curve. If I need to change this curve, 2 points is going to ensure that it's the smoothest it can be. That's why I don't put additional points in between. All right. That's what you should aspire towards, what you should work towards. It takes practice. It takes work. There's nothing to substitute for that. But once you get comfortable with working with this tool, you're going to be good for all the other Adobe Creative Cloud apps. All right. So you're welcome to try this icon. If you just Google Twitter icon, it'll come up. Say, grab it out of Google Images, place it as a template image into your Illustrator file, and you can do this as well. But there is an exercise I want you to do, and I will send that along in the email. Stay warm.